Item 10E, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Moffitt and Nichol to provide technical assistance for the FEMA San Francisco Bay Coastal Study in the amount of $20,720 and appropriating funds in this amount from the Stormwater Fund to the Stormwater Program operating budget.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency, otherwise known as FEMA, recently completed an engineering study of the San Francisco Bay, which included a detailed analysis of the coastal hazards as part of the California Coastal Analysis and Mapping project. The study was part of FEMA's nationwide risk mapping assessment and planning program to determine the extent of the special flood hazard areas for coastal communities and to update the flood insurance study reports and the FERM maps, which is known as the flood insurance rate maps. They studied 9 different counties, such as San Mateo, San Francisco, Santa Clara, Marin, Contra Costa. According to FEMA, these coastal flood maps hasn't been updated since the 1980s. For their assessment, they used various different tide gauges and storm information from the past 30 years to perform their evaluation. They also used recent topo data or elevations back from 2010 and 2011 collected from the USGS and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, otherwise known as NOAA. With these data, they performed hydraulic modeling and engineering analysis to determine, and generate these wave models of the San Francisco Bay. And the evaluation does not include, the effects from tsunamis or the sea level rise, but it mainly evaluated the wave action from like storm surges and swells and wave run-up, and these overtopping of waves above these structures, just like levees, and to predict, the potential for these water to inundate the land areas that are nearby. Late last year, FEMA provided the results of these analysis to various agencies for review and to see comments. They only provided the agency with just maps only. Just going to show you the maps that the city has received from FEMA. So the results of the study identified some potential flood hazard areas in San Bruno. The majority of the affected area is comprised of residential properties located on the west side of 101 and south of Interstate 380. It's the first time that the city has been kind of involved with the FEMA process. When these maps becomes effective, properties shown in the flood, these FERM maps will be required to purchase flood insurance if the property has a federally regulated or insured lender loans. So the staff has already reviewed these the maps and provided comments to FEMA and for clarifications. Since this is an important issue for not only for the city but for the residents, staff is recommending to seek assistance to verify and understand the technical evaluation conducted by FEMA, and to develop additional comments and propose mitigations to send to FEMA for the process of appeal. FEMA has given the city provide additional written comments up until February 16th. I will be showing you a schedule after that and what it entails. So currently, staff has sought the proposal from Moffitt and Nichol to provide the technical assistance. Moffitt and Nichol is an engineering firm that has the experience doing hydraulic analysis and performing these technical evaluations. They're already performing the sea level rise study for the county. They're also under contract with San Francisco Airport for to evaluate the FERM maps for them as well. And they also have experience engaging with FEMA on these flood topics. The scope includes coordinating and obtaining information from FEMA and to review these documents and providing comments and feedback back to FEMA regarding the affected areas that we have here in San Bruno. And a technical memorandum will be provided as part of the study. The remaining schedule, currently the deadline for the initial commenting period was back in December 17th. in 2015, FEMA will be releasing the preliminary maps, and then there will be a 90 days appeal period between October 15th through January 16th, and the final map will be issued in May 2016, and then the new maps will be effective in September 2016. So the cost for the services, it's $20,720. Although it's within the city manager's approved limit, staff is bringing to council today because there's really no funding to cover the cost of this contract. And the city manager may have some additional comments on this as well. There is a balance of approximately $100,000 in unappropriate funds in the stormwater fund, and staff is recommending an appropriation of an amount sufficient to cover the cost of this contract from the stormwater fund to the stormwater operating budget. So therefore, staff is recommending the council to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Moffett & Nichol to provide technical assistance for the FEMA San Francisco Bay Coastal Study in an amount of $20,720.
Any questions of staff or Connie?
If I might just add briefly, as the Deputy Director has indicated, this is an urgent and we believe very important issue that needs our attention. Otherwise, we wouldn't bring it to you, and unfortunately, we're bringing it to you in a little bit of a piecemeal manner. Because we have an immediate deadline for some additional comments. We want to make sure those comments are complete and robust enough to represent the city's urgent concern about making sure we understand and can address any potential flood hazards and the impacts that may create for our residents as this process moves forward. What I wanted you to know and understand, though, is that at this point, we do anticipate the potential need for additional funding and additional consulting assistance to be able to assist us potentially in developing proposals or alternatives to present to FEMA as this process moves forward. But we're unable at this time to give you a good assessment of whether we will need to move in that direction, and if so, how much it might cost. So we wanted to get this to you quickly, make sure we're able to respond appropriately by the February 16th deadline, and then simply know that this will be an issue that will be on your radar screen going forward over the next 9 to 12 months as this process unfolds, with the potential for additional technical assistance needed.
Okay. Any questions of staff?
Through the chair? Oh, yeah.
Ken?
I don't doubt that it's important, and I don't understand why FEMA has a report and now we have to hire consultants to deal with the report. I mean, we're not on an island here either. I'm sure there's, maybe Moffett & Nichol, they're working with the airport already. Who else are they working with? They're probably working with South City. Who's Millbrae hiring? Who is San Carlos hiring? Who's Burlingame hiring? All of these cities that surround and touch the bay are probably in the same boat. I mean, why isn't someone maybe in the county screaming, why don't we form a JPB or something? We're all going to be doing our own little thing, and it's probably going to be a lot of information that's going to be interpreted the same way. And then sea level rise is going to come along, and now we're going to be dealing with that consultant possibly for that also. Why? Why? It just seems that in a county of 20 cities, and then how many other cities that surround this bay, we're dealing with this stuff separately. I mean, has that question ever come up?
Councilman Rivera. Right. Each city has its own situation here. For example, our neighboring city, South San Francisco, they don't have the impact that we're going to be experiencing with the residential houses coming into the flood, 100-year flood, and being required to have the flood insurance. They had the Colma Creek improvements from the Colma Creek Flood Control District, and actually because of that, several parts of the city came out of the flood, so they're in a better position. The problem is that because that flood control district actually did improvement to Colma Creek, the flooding actually came down more towards the bay. So now, adding that to the sea rise, as well as the wave action that's brand new into this flood control study, we're going to have certain areas of the city that goes into the 100-year flood and will be subject to the insurance. So each city will be a little bit different along the peninsula surrounding the bay. But you are correct. There are many cities that are going to get impacted. The levels of impact is going to be vastly different from one city to another. Some cities will have areas that will be excluded now from the 100-year flood, and some will be adding areas. And it's unfortunate for us that this area just east of San Mateo Avenue, in the avenue areas east of the Caltrain towards 101 will be included, and we have to be prepared for that. Yeah.
I'm fully aware of the issues in San Mateo also with, with their flood control district and everything. So I'm just saying that it's not just confined to our boundaries, and I realize that there's going to be different characteristics to, issues in each town, in each city. But we're responding to a federal agency, and everyone's doing this, there's probably going to be duplicate work. I'm sure there is.
We can certainly take a look at that. As the director indicated, the issues are very different, and at this point, we've actually, given the tight timeline and our relative unfamiliarity with this process, we've spent the last 2 months really scrambling to become familiar with the process and the people and how to deal with the situation. So we have not as yet broadly explored what other cities are doing. We're familiar with a couple of the adjacent agencies, San Francisco Airport, South San Francisco, but we can certainly pursue that a little bit further. I will tell you that this issue is a high priority on the radar screen of our county supervisor, Dave Pine, and his office. They've brought some useful information to us, and we will be working with them as well with their leadership on the sea level rise issue, and we will certainly explore through them and with our colleagues to see whether there's an opportunity to coordinate and collaborate.
Any other questions?
Through the chair.
Michael?
The city manager made a reference to a February deadline, but I don't see that on that timeline. Can you repeat what that deadline was?
Correct, and the city had been notified by FEMA a lot later than what the other agencies had been notified, so the FEMA has given the city an extension to provide the comments back to them. So even though it was the December 17th deadline, we're given additional 30 days up until January 16th. And from there on, we were also given additional 30 days up until February to provide additional comments that we may have.
Okay. And compared to the previous map that was done back in the 80s, I'm assuming this is dramatically different because we don't have really anything to compare to other than what you showed us there with the red area. But there was some localized flooding there, I'm assuming.
To our knowledge, no portion of San Bruno was included in the previous maps, and again, only to our knowledge, no portion of San Bruno has ever been included in the flood rate area maps.
Okay.
So this is a brand new situation for us, and not a welcome one.
Okay.
It's certainly one that requires our urgent and strategic and attention with a high level of technical understanding.
Okay. And is there any opportunity to piggyback on what the airport is doing regarding their study? Because it definitely borders that area that they're calling out.
The director may have indicated, or the deputy director may have indicated in his report that Moffett and Nickel is actually contracted, and this goes to Councilmember Rivera's comments. Moffett and Nickel is the firm that is contracted to San Francisco Airport in dealing with these same issues relative to their inundation area on the FEMA maps. Similarly, Moffett and Nickel is also contracted to the Sea Level Rise Task Force Working Group that is doing some analysis on that related but different topic. And so we felt that going straight to them, it turns out that South San Francisco is using another technical advisor, but given the proximity and the potential for familiarity, a detailed level of familiarity with this area and the issues that may be impactful to the FEMA analysis, we thought we would just go straight to Moffett and Nickel and take advantage of their local area familiarity as well as their technical expertise.
Okay. Thank you.
One last thing is how, once this map comes out, how are we going to communicate to the public? How does this, at this stage, affect the residents in that area?
Sure. Well, at this point, the FEMA process provides for the public portion of the process for the maps to be finalized and for public communication, both via FEMA but also via the city, because we want to make sure that that it's explained to residents should the maps stay as they are or significantly as they are. That process would not be ready to roll out until late summer is my understanding. Is that correct? That's correct. So you see on the timeline here, June of 2015 is when FEMA proposes, according to the current schedule, to release, and that would be meaning publicly release, the preliminary flood insurance rate maps. So in that timeline and continuing for the next approximately 6 months is the timeline for public outreach, education, and communication.
We're under the gun.
We're very much under the gun.
Okay, so there's really not going to be anything reported back. So this, from what this consultant will do and how we respond back in the middle of February.
Not between now and February. What we would anticipate as a result of this initial work effort would be some strategic advice about whether there is a potential for us to, possibly to move to an additional level of work effort to develop proposed scenarios, proposed physical improvements that might be compelling to FEMA to mitigate some of the inundation concerns that the maps currently suggest.
Okay, any other questions? Okay.
I'll introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.